Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Stage 32 Next Level webinar. My name is Harrison. I'm so glad to have everyone here today. We've been really excited for this webinar for a while. We're going to talk deep about what it really means to be a writer full-time, how you can use that to your advantage, how you can think ahead. For everyone here who either is writing full-time or who is leading towards that, it's good to get a perspective from someone who's done it on what it really means, what you should be focusing on, what you really need to be wary of and watch out for, things like that. So that's what we're going to get into today with our special guest, Lorraine McKenna, who is a writer full-time. She worked at Pixar as a story manager, but now she is a writer. Along with a writing partner, they have been putting together a lot of things and selling them. I'll let Lorraine go more into depth on her background. Well, we can do it briefly, but we're so glad to have her here. She's a lot of fun and I think knows the stuff really well. So you guys are all in for a treat. Before we get started though, I had a few things to bring up. One is this is a live interactive webinar, which means you are all gonna have the chance to ask any questions you would like. We have a lot of people in the room today, but we'll try to get to as many as we can. But we're gonna save the bulk of the questions to the end. But I still wanna show everyone now how to ask questions, which is through the questions box of your GoToWebinar toolbar. And I'd love to do a practice round with everyone to give you the chance to see how this works. If you can pop out that questions box and in there, type in where it is that you're tuning in from today. So what city, what state, what country. So Lorraine and I can get a sense of who's in the room. And while you're doing that, thanks everyone for chiming in. I will also remind you that we're recording this. So if you have to leave early, if you are late, in which case you were not hearing this, but you will later, this will be available in your Stage 32 account in about 24 to 48 hours. So you can watch the full thing. And then we are social here at Stage 32. I hope you are all as well. If you enjoyed this, feel free to share it and talk about what you learned and spread the good word. Tag us while you're at it. We're at Stage 32 on Instagram and Twitter. And before we get started, Lorraine, let's see who's here. We've got someone here from Virginia, Essex, UK, Las Vegas,
cool.
Raleigh, North Carolina, Las Vegas again, another Las Vegas, Oregon, got a few LAs, Chicago, Ontario, Brooklyn, New York, Maryland. Oh, got a lot of Las Vegas's here. Interesting.
Cool.
Sacramento, Portland, Boston, London, Connecticut, Vancouver, a lot more LAs. Someone here from Australia. I think it's late over there. And Phoenix, Arizona, Van Nuys, California. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We're so glad to have you. This is where you'll be typing in questions throughout, but we'll save the bulk for the end. And other than that, I will peace out for now, and I'll join you all for the questions, and I'll turn things over to Lorraine.
Oh, thank you. I can't see the questions, so I'm just trusting you.
I'll do my best.
My name is Lorraine McKenna, and I am a full-time writer, which is always still hard to say I'm a writer, which I think is something that I will probably struggle with my whole life. It's exciting and terrifying to admit and say and own. I just want to sort of start off by letting everyone know that I'm not an expert in anything except my own experience. So everything I'm going to be talking about is, just from my very limited POV. I write character-driven scripts, and so it's just from their POV. So that's what I'm going to be talking about as well. So, I think there are no absolutes in art. So a lot of people talk about rules and how you do things and how you get there. And it's never been my experience to follow those rules. And I'm not a rule breaker or a disruptor on purpose, but the rules, I don't know who made them. And they don't always work for me. So I just make my own. And again, it's not like a deliberate, like, I'm going to smash the rules. It's more like, that doesn't work for me, so I'll do something differently. I've had a rather unorthodox path to LA, and I can talk about that if anyone wants to hear about it. But so I just want to let everyone know that, like, anything I say, if it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, and you want to tell me to fuck off and, set me on fire, that's fine too. Because, I'm just here to talk about my experience. And then my teaching style, if it's even a teaching style, is sort of conversational or rambling. So I may be talking about something, and then in the middle of what I'm talking about, because I think out loud, I'll come up with some new answer to it. So I am muddling through this like everyone else. And so we'll just get through this together, and I hope everyone has lots of great questions. And I'm really excited about this opportunity because one of my favorite things is to talk about myself and my experience. So if that didn't just scare everybody, let's get started on, let's see what this says, how to build your career as a full-time writer. All right, so, oh, I don't know, it's not going. I can't, oh, here it is, okay. And I guess before we get started, I could talk a little bit about my career. I started as a playwright before we get here. So I started as a playwright. I got my master's of fine arts in playwriting, and then I set up with other playwrights from my graduate class, we built a theater company in San Francisco, which was amazing, but obviously does not pay the bills. And I sort of drifted away from writing for a while, working in, corporate San Francisco. And I shopped a lot at Ann Taylor because it was back in the early 2000s. And then I was an actress, in community theater, nothing big, nothing paid. And then I found my way to Pixar and teaching at St. Mary's College. And at Pixar, I was there for about 10 years, and I worked on Ratatouille, Up, Brave, Inside Out, and The Good Dinosaur. After 10 years, I decided it was time to leave. I quit. I moved to Los Angeles with my husband and my 2.5-year-old daughter to work at Paramount Animation, where I was a development producer and the associate producer on Wonder Park. And then, I was only there for a year, and then I made really good friends with Meg LaFaux while we were working together on Inside Out. And she was sort of one of 4 people I knew in Los Angeles when I moved down here. And she was always very encouraging of my writing and my voice. And we came up with a show idea together with another writer, Chris Whitaker. And we pitched it and we sold it to NBC. So my first foray into screenwriting was a huge success. And I thought, oh, that's what happens. You just go pitch in a room and somebody buys it. That's not what happened. It was very hard to keep going after that. But officially, technically, I've been a professional screenwriter since 2016. Since then, I've sold a couple of other shows. And right now, I'm EPing and show running an adult animated show in development with a really brilliant writer. So we're partnering on it. But she wrote this. It's her idea. She's writing the script, and then I'm supervising it. And I can talk about what that means later. I'm writing all the time and trying to get things set up all the time. Hustle, hustle, hustle. Anyway, that was my long, rambly introduction. So let's get started. A rundown, what it actually means to be a full-time writer. What does a day, month, year in the life look like? Well, I wake up stressed every morning. Stressed, excited, scared. I find that no matter what I'm doing or working on, it always takes a little bit of a time to get into the writing. I'm a procrastinator. I don't think that's good or bad. I just am. So sometimes it takes me a little bit of a push if I don't have a deadline or if I'm not working on something for money to get into it. I always have multiple projects going on. Whether that's a pitch I'm working on to take out to a network, if I'm consulting for somebody, like a paid gig on the side, if there's a script I'm working on, I'm always trying to come up with new ideas. I'm always trying to, and then on the side, I'm always like texting with my friends if something goes wrong, or I need texting with my writing friends, like, oh my God, I got this note, what do I do? And then someone helps me through it. So a day for me, a month, a year is a little bit scattered, except for when I'm fully in a script. And then I will just write for 10 hours if I can. Like, I get into the state where my daughter comes downstairs and waves her hand down in front of my face and I don't even notice. So every day is different, honestly. But I will say every day is a little bit stressful. And when I'm in the day of it, it feels reasonable. Like, okay, I have my to-do list of what do I want to accomplish today, the calls I have to make, the emails I have to respond to. But then when I think about 6 months or a year ahead, I start to get really freaked out. I had a moment last night where I was like, okay, if this show that I have in development doesn't go to series, I don't have anything that's close to going to series. So I got to get it together. I have to write a pitch, and I have to sell something. Something has to be in the work. So it's this sort of balance of allowing myself to be creative and finding that writer's groove, but also panicking and strategizing about the future and how I'm going to continue to make a living and support my family. I am the sole income earner for my family, so it was a huge risk for me to move my family here and to pursue this career, because if it doesn't work out for me, I kind of don't know what we're going to do. So that sort of always is in the background. I have a lot of people who believe in me, which is great, but unless I produce enough work that's sellable, I honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do. So my only option is really just to do this. Successes, setbacks, and how to push through them. I mean, I think failure is so necessary. It's awful. I mean, let me just say that it's awful. Getting rejected, getting a pass, not being able to really crack something, rewriting something hundreds of times, and still people are like, I don't get it. You know, all of that feels like failure, and all of that feels like the universe telling me no, stop, quit, run away. So that's real, and my feelings about it are real. I cry sometimes. I get very frustrated. I'm in a grouchy mood. But the other side of it, you know, when you get some distance from it, you realize that that failure, that setback allowed you, well, allowed me to be able to do something else. There are things, of course, I really, really wanted that I didn't get, that I'm so thankful didn't happen for different reasons. So, for example, one of the shows I sold to a network, the first network call we had, you know, network notes, very exciting, like so exciting, but at the same time terrifying. The network notes basically were like, we know what we bought from you, but now we're asking you to write the pilot, and it's the opposite of what we bought, which happens, right? We want to take this fundamental concept. We don't want it to be a premise pilot. We want all the characters to already have met, and you can't say this one thing that, you know, was what the whole show was about. So writing the pilot for the network notes, instead of sort of checking back with myself about what I was actually writing about, was probably, well, it was a good learning opportunity, right? So that then when he turned in the pilot, it didn't get picked up to series, which was a super bummer at the time. But I'm so thankful now, because then I would have been stuck writing a show I didn't even believe in anymore, because I was trying to satisfy the network notes instead of checking back in with myself to see what it was I was really trying to say and how I could satisfy the network notes and tell my story. So it was devastating at the time. One thing that I recently discovered from a really gifted writer friend of mine is she always says, things usually work out for me. And when she first started saying this, I was super mad at her. Like, how dare you? That's so crazy. I'm offended. I was offended when she would say that to me. And then I thought, what if I start saying that? Things usually work out for me. And I'm not a mantra person. I love to talk about how I'm a cynic, blah, blah, blah. But things usually work out for me sort of calms me down when I think about that. Things usually do work out for me. It is a struggle, and I've had a really hard years, you know, in my whole life, but things usually work out for me, and that is how I deal with success and setbacks. Dealing with success. Dealing with success is just as hard as dealing with failure, because you're leveling up, and now you're in new terrifying territory. Now you're being asked to do something you've never done before, and you feel like your ass is out all the time. That's my experience. Like, what am I doing? How do I do this? How does it work? So both, I think, feel the same in your body. Both, you know, I think fear and excitement feel the same. And for me, the most important thing with managing both those things is having one person who understands, who can sympathize with you, who can shore you up, or a group. Both of those things are so critical. They happen all the time. Success and setbacks, like that is the name of the game. And sometimes you don't realize at the time, but one thing can be both a success and a setback. And so having people to help you untangle what it is really, really critical. It has been for me. Wow, I just talked a long time for one slide. Let's hope I can push through this a little more quickly, although my screen doesn't work. Okay. Oh, this is a fun one. Making ends meet. How much can you expect to make for different opportunities? Did I go too far? Hold on. Sorry, I'm not a technical person. Okay, I did this slide. Okay, a rundown, what it actually means to be a full-time writer. Sorry, everyone. Writing versus waiting. So yeah, writing and waiting are the name of the game. You have to always be writing, always be writing, always writing anything, everything, always. And then there's this part of it where you deliver a script and then you have to wait. And I don't know who said, I think it was Ed Solomon. He was talking about when you deliver a script, that the number of pages in the script is the number of minutes you get before you freak out. So if you deliver a 35-page pilot, you have exactly 35 minutes before you freak out, right? You have that part where you're like, I delivered it. I feel so good about it. I'm done. I can't wait to get feedback. Everyone's going to love this. And then after 35 minutes, you start the cycle of, oh my God, it's garbage. I hate myself. All the negative things. Well, that's what happens to me. I start to tell myself the narrative that what I'm doing isn't worth it. I struggle with this stuff a lot, like the balance of being positive and championing my work and being positive. Did I already say that? And then the other side is wanting to run away, self-doubt, imposter syndrome. Waiting is really hard. Waiting to get notes is really, really hard. One thing you should never do is wait to be chosen. You'll never be chosen. You should never wait to be chosen. You need to be doing the work. You need to be writing. You need to have samples available. You need to be in progress, thinking up ideas all the time. No one is going to see you and think, oh, I'm going to give that person a chance without first reading you, without meeting you. So that the waiting is hard. Is this life right for you? I mean, if you're a writer, it is. I mean, you're a writer for a reason. You have a voice and you're called to tell stories. So tell them. The world needs your stories. I don't know that it's something you can reject. You know, I found a journal that I wrote when I was in 5th grade, and we were cleaning out the garage the other day, and I found it, and it's me, it's my voice. You can't mistake it. And I'm telling stories as a 5th grader, and in part of it is we all gathered around the campfire, and then I told stories to everybody. I've always been a storyteller, whether that was as an actress or even as a story manager at Pixar, controlling the narrative, helping people get the work done. And so it's sort of at this point in my life, I couldn't resist it anymore. I have to do it because I pushed it off. I pushed it away. I neglected it for so many years. When I was at Pixar for those 10 years, I didn't write very much. I thought that telling other people's stories was enough. Being a producer, being a creative partner for the people at Pixar was enough. And it was great. I mean, I loved it when I loved it. And I'm so proud of the work I did there. And I know that those movies are changed for my involvement in them, which I'm so proud of. But, I want to tell my own story. So I can't tell you if this life is right for you. That's something that you have to sit with and make a choice about. Being a full-time writer, I don't know. I can't give you that advice either. It's terrifying. I will say that. It's absolutely terrifying. So I don't know, but you are a storyteller. I mean, if you're here taking this class, if you're curious about it, then you're a storyteller, you're a writer. I don't know that you can unchoose that. It's your responsibility to figure out how that works for you. Making ends meet. How much can you expect to make for different opportunities? It's hard to get into this because there are so many different factors involved. There are a couple places you can check out though. The WGA publishes their, it's called the Schedule of Minimums, the MBA. You can Google it. And I think if you're not in the WGA, you can access the WGA website to at least Google the minimums, but that gives you a very clear layout of how much you can expect to make, the minimum according to the contract that the WGA has made with the studios. So if you're a WGA writer and you are hired to do a job and it's in this certain parameter, that is the minimum that the studio can pay you. So if you're not in the WGA, if you're pre-WGA, you can use that as a starting point to negotiate. Now, a lot of non-union places will pay you less, and that's totally fine sometimes, but you can use that as a good basis to understand what the numbers actually are. A little more mystifying is how much you get paid to write a pilot if you sell a show, and those numbers are all over the place. That could be, you could get paid, let's say you pitch a show to a studio, the studio and you take it to a network wants to pay you to write the pilot, which is development. And then you could make, I don't know, I think it's like $35,000 to $700,000, and it really depends on so many different factors. So the money is all over the place, and I was mystified by it. Like, I had no idea how much I was going to get paid until like that contract came. I still, every time I get a new I sell something or I have a new opportunity to negotiate, it's always surprising to me how it all works. So I don't know, but I would check out the WGA schedule of minimums, and then the Animation Guild posts one as well. And it's interesting to see what the differences are, because the Animation Guild, IATSE, has a much different relationship with animation writers. So you can see where the different like script minimums are, and just gives you an idea of what those minimums are. When can you feel safe in giving up your side job? Sorry, my email just popped up here and I don't know how to get rid of it. Harrison, can you help me?
Yeah, sure. I think maybe, can you double click the one to the left? Looks like you have like a double
I don't
thumbs
know
up.
how to get my email gone.
Can you just close out of the window, like, is the top
I
left?
see it.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Awesome. And
Sorry,
just press
everyone.
present again.
I don't know why it's doing that. Like I said, I'm not a tech person.
That's all good.
Okay.
And by the way, while you're
that.
doing that, no, it's perfect.
Okay.
And then I did just put in the chat the minimum contracted minimums for the WGA, and I'll find it also for the animation one, and I'll add it to the files as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great thing to look at just to get your bearings, just to be like, oh, this is how much you get when you're a weekly staff writer. Oh, this is how much you can expect to get paid if you sell a spec script, or this is what if you get hired to polish somebody else's script, what that minimum is. Yeah, so that's great. All right, so you're probably going to see my emails come in, and that's going to happen again. I apologize. I barely know how to operate a typewriter, let alone a computer. So when can you feel safe in giving up your side job? I still work side jobs, so I don't know the answer to that. Like, I still do consulting. I do script editor work for Screen Australia and Screen Queensland. I still sometimes do other consulting work. I make myself available for certain opportunities, because another thing I learned how to say, in addition to things always work out for me, is money comes to me easily and quickly, which is something that, so Meg LaFauve and I do a podcast called The Screenwriting Life, and we have a Facebook group where fans of the show sort of interact, lots of writers, emerging writers and established writers. And one of the writers put that in there, and I thought, yes, money comes to me easily and quickly. And sometimes it doesn't come to me like I expect. Sometimes I need to be open for other things. So I don't know that I will ever give up my side jobs. Now, to be fair, I'm not working a part-time job for somebody else. I'm still very much working for myself. For me, it wasn't an option when my contract with Paramount was up. I sold a TV show, and I didn't want to go back to feature animation production at that time. So I didn't, and I just was like, I'm going to make this work. And I somehow got a gig. I think I got a gig through LinkedIn to do a rewrite on a movie, an animation movie in Dubai, which is a really great experience. So, it's odd how sometimes opportunities come to you. I think there might be a misconception that once you become a full-time writer, that's it. You're just going to be, all the jobs are going to come to you, and that's really, really not how it works. Okay, I'm going to click something again and go through the screen. Okay, finding the writing, living balance. Staying connected in what can be an isolating job. So that's really hard right now. We've been in the pandemic for a year. For me, the podcast has really been great. And then interacting with people on Facebook, on the Facebook group for the podcast, building my friend group, both writers and people in the industry and other people. I'm very social. I'm an extreme extrovert, so this has been very challenging for me. Um, I am a showrunner, so my career jam is being in a writer's room running a production. So I am not a feature writer. I mean, I've written a feature. I love writing features, but where I really want to be, where I feel comfortable, is in a room, in a production space. I can't wait to get back to that. As far as screenwriting, I know that can be an isolating job. The feature that I did write involved a lot of crying, and I poked myself a lot with the pins that I was pinning up the index card, so that was not ideal for me. At Pixar, of course, and in feature production, it's a huge, you have 300 people on the crew, so it's much different. So I do much better with a lot of people around me. So the pandemic has been really hard. I honestly don't know how I'm staying connected. It's a job every day to figure out what I need, to identify that and figure out how to get it. And I'm somewhat successful at it. I mean, yesterday I just had a bad day. I just had a really bad day. I felt tired. I felt funky. I couldn't focus on my work. I don't know, my kid's in 3rd grade. My husband wasn't feeling well. It's just sometimes you're going to have a bad day, and just being okay with that, I guess, is the answer. I really don't know the answer. I'd love someone to tell me this, how you do this. In pre-pandemic times, it was having generals with people in the real world, and Zoom generals are hard. We can talk more about what generals are and all of that later, although I'm sure everybody here knows what that is. How to ensure you can maintain relationships with your friends and family. Don't be a dick. Communicate about what you need and where you are. It's really hard for me. I'm trying this new thing where I'm establishing that my needs are equal to everyone else's in my family's. So my daughter needs me to be with her in the morning for school, and my husband needs me to do other things. But what I need to do for me is to come down to my glamorous basement office and write. And so my needs aren't more important than theirs, but they are as important. And if I don't communicate, then they don't know, and they can't support me. I'm pretty shitty at it. I get to the point where I get really mad and then have a little rage fit and like, I need to write, and then it becomes a fight. So that's what I mean by don't be a dick, only because I'm telling myself that. This is interpersonal. I think both of these things, how to stay connected and how to maintain relationships, is figuring out what you need and what you want, and then articulating that in a way that encourages people to support you in your endeavors. I think it's hard if part of this is about other people not wanting you to do the work that you're doing. If you're an emerging writer and you're working a full-time job and you've got family members who don't believe that being a writer is a real thing that you should do, that's really, really hard. And I don't know how to speak to that because, I'm a grown-up middle-aged lady and I don't listen to other people. I don't know that I ever did. So, but I know for a lot of people, it's really hard, that the voices are very loud coming from the outside to say, don't do that, it's not worth it. Again, this goes back to, you can't run for this. This is, I would figure out a way to turn those voices off. Maybe don't argue, maybe just do what you need to do. Figure out what you want, how to articulate it, and then surround yourself with people who are supportive. Tips to get the actual writing done. I would love for someone to tell me that. Finding inspiration. I don't necessarily believe in finding inspiration. You just have to sit down and write. Yesterday, I let my crappy mood get the best of me and I did not sit down and write, and I shouldn't have, right? Well, I mean, yesterday is done. I have to move on, but don't wait for inspiration. Don't wait for the optimal circumstances, like I have to have my cup of coffee here and I have to have this pen, although that stuff is lovely, right, to create comfort. But whether you're inspired or not, you have to sit down and write. You have to get the pages out, and they will be crappy. And you have to keep writing until you find out one thing that makes you light up, that makes your that makes you cry, that makes you feel like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I want to talk about. And sometimes, sorry, I don't know if you can hear it, but my dog is sneezing in the background. I'm so sorry. I know this is recorded. It's a little chaotic here today. Sorry. So you keep writing. You have to keep writing. And sometimes you have to write for 20 pages before you find the thing that is what you're really trying to say. And sometimes you're going to write all day and it's all garbage. And you have to get up the next day and keep writing. Sometimes you're going to wake up and be inspired and just sit down and go. And you grab a hold of it when that happens. You just get up and you write in your pajamas and you just write. But most of the time, you're not going to be inspired. Most of the time, you're going to feel like, I don't have anything to say. I'm really struggling. Right now, I need to start a new project and I just type. I mean, I haven't found it yet, but that, to be fair, I did type a bunch of garbage yesterday at the end of the day. But I have to find a new project and I have to figure out what I'm mad about in order to write it. And I haven't accessed it yet, but I will. And I think it's believing that eventually I will be able to find the thing because I'm a writer and I don't know why I haven't figured it out yet, but I will. Organization strategies. I am quite possibly the worst person to talk about organization. I'm pretty sure I have ADD. I don't know where my keys are right now. I have 3 bottles of water on my desk. I don't know how old they are. I've got Clorox wipes and some paper towels. I have no idea why. I am not organized at all. I try to get my brain to think that way and it don't. One thing I'm very good at is organizing my files in Final Draft and naming conventions, because that's what I did as a script supervisor at Pixar. I don't ever delete anything I write. I save as, I date it, I version it, and I move on to the next document. Sometimes in a day, I'll have 6 or 7 different versions of the same script because I changed one scene over and over and over again, because nothing I do should ever be deleted and nothing you do should ever be deleted. Write it, it doesn't work, great. Save as, put it in the file, move on to the next version. I very rarely go back to the old versions that I thought were garbage, but they always help me get to the next place. And so for me, though, it's this great security to know that everything I wrote has worth and value because it's helping me get to the next place. But if I sit in the same document and I delete and I delete and I delete, it starts to feel like a creepy wasteland and that nothing is working. But if I just open up a new master document and start rewriting that scene, I feel like I'm making progress. That is pretty much my only organization strategy. I can write anywhere because I have this computer when I know how to use it, when you're not all seeing my emails come in. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm just really bad at organization. Again, I think it's just figuring out what works for you and also accepting how you are and how your brain works. Like I have tried my whole life, I think, to be the person who puts their keys away in the same place every day, who has, like so here's what I bought that I love. I have this Hobonichi, it's Hobonichi. I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if you can see me at all, but I'm holding it up. It's this calendaring system that I love. And I very rarely fill it out, but it gives me great comfort. So I have always been trying to find systems and I have yet to find one. And I think it's because that's just not how my brain works. I'm disorganized. I like to procrastinate and I'm chaotic and I am a binge writer. I like to sit down and write for 10 hours and then not write for a week, which probably isn't great. And it's the opposite of the advice I just gave you, but scheduling your day, gee, I don't know. I mean, I start out by checking my emails and then I am a procrastinator. So I have to push through that in order to get work done. I don't think procrastination is a bad thing. Like I said before, I think it's just embracing why you're procrastinating. Like I have to look at it in terms of, am I procrastinating because I'm afraid? Am I procrastinating because usually it's I'm afraid. I'm afraid of getting into the writing. I'm afraid it will suck, or I'm afraid I'll touch on something that will make me feel really emotional and wasted. And that's exactly why I should be writing. So, sorry, my kid's upstairs. I'm really sorry, you guys. I know this is recorded and I probably seem like the least professional person, but I mean, honestly, this is me. This is what you get. I don't know how to schedule my day. I sort of go with the flow every day, unless I have a deadline. If I have a deadline or I'm in a script, I can't not write. Like if I'm in something and I just have to get up and do it every day. So sorry, I don't have better tips on this one. Getting better, being your own critic and being your own champion. Getting better is about writing new projects, right? There is keep writing new projects, because we get better at craft as we move forward. If you stay in one script too long, you start to lose the thread. So you write something, it may not be where you want it to be, start something new, have 3 or 4 projects going on at a time, if that's how your brain works, if you can do that. Getting better is about reading other scripts. The WGA library, which I think is open to anyone, they have every script that was ever nominated. Ask your friends who are in the Academy or in the WGA if you can look at the scripts that get sent out during screening season. I think that's legal. I know you can't look at the DVDs, but the scripts I think you can look at. So read books, read essays, read poetry, read movie scripts, watch everything, see what they're doing, rewatch things, and then you start to see the craft in it. And then try to do things, do exercises, take classes. When you get notes, listen to how people give you notes that resonate with you. If somebody just dives into the things that aren't working, that's going to put you off on your guard. But if somebody starts by telling you what is working, then you can see what you're good at, what is working, and then they give you notes about maybe what they have a question about, which is I think how you give notes. Then you can start to figure, and you can dig into that, what's not working there. Being your own critic is also about separating yourself from the work. And this is a struggle a lot of writers have, that when you are not your work. Your work is something else. Your work isn't even an extension of you, really. So you are you, and then your work is something else. It's hard because we say, I am a writer, and it's so personal and it's so deep and true. And then when we give it to somebody and they don't like it, or it doesn't win the contest, or it gets rejected from a festival, or no one wants to buy it, it feels so personal. But being able to figure out how not to take that personally so that you can keep going is so critical. And that's when you lean on your friends. That's when you find that mentor or that person that can tell you, you are not your work. And being your own champion is knowing who you are as a writer, right? So I don't write I don't write necessarily comedy or animation or live action. I write stories about women who are trapped in constructs of the patriarchy and then break out of it. So disruptors, rule breakers, which isn't a surprise, right? And that can be in any medium and any genre, right? So knowing what you're good at, like I know I'm good at dialogue. I know I'm good at character. And so I know I can confidently say that in a meeting or to somebody else or when I'm writing. And I think it's so important to figure out what you're good at, how to get good feedback from the right people. This is a really good question. Now, getting feedback from the right people means that you surround yourself with people who believe in you and know where you are as an artist, as a writer. This means people who are looking out for you, who want you to be successful, who are not in competition with you, who really legitimately want you to be successful. And that when they give you notes, you can feel that in the notes and that they know where you are in your script process. So I can give a script to Meg and say, this is a first draft. And she knows what that means. So she's not going to come and give me a bunch of structure notes. She's not going to come and give me a bunch of logic notes. She's looking at it to see if there's the emotional truth of the real story in there, if there's a story engine in it. So find people who you can trust and who know you. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be a person in the industry. I know some people who use their partners who know story because they are good storytellers, even though they're not professional writers. So that's just about knowing where you are, communicating where you are and what you need. And also, when you feel shitty after someone gives you notes, figure out if it's the notes or how that person gave you notes. I think a good test is someone should be telling you what works, what they love, and then questions they have. When people start to tell you suggestions, that can be a useful thing, but it's them writing your script now. So when you do, like when you give notes and you're poking at something and you're like, I don't understand, I didn't get this relationship here. Why is she throwing the trash can at him? What if instead she drove over him with a car? Now, you might not want her to drive him over with a car. You use the trash can throwing for something else. So the question the note giver was giving you was really about that isn't earned, or it isn't believable, or so you dig at that. And I guess that's understanding the notes behind the note, which is when somebody has a question or when somebody has a suggestion about an area, really ask yourself, why did they have a question here? Why isn't this working? Is this not earned? You know, part of it is I have to rant it out, right? So if somebody gives me a note and they say, I didn't believe her when she threw the garbage can. So then I get mad, right? Because there's a process to getting notes, which is fuck you for giving me that note. And then, oh shit, fuck me, I don't know what to do. And then you figure out what to do. So in between all those, figuring out the note and the note, for me, what I do is I talk to a friend and I'm like, I don't understand why the garbage can wasn't reading. I don't want her to hit anyone with a car. She's not someone that would hit with a car. She's someone that would throw a garbage can at them because she, you know, I don't know, she just threw something important in that garbage and she's throwing the important thing back at him. And then I have to think, well, what did she just throw away? Why is she throwing the garbage at him? So I really have to dig into the character's why. And that's how you find the note under the note. That was probably a really shitty example, but digging into yelling or processing or writing about why you got that note and how you feel about it, and then figuring out what's under there. And it's usually something like it's not the emotion isn't earned, the action isn't earned, logically it didn't work, something bumped there, and you have to figure out what it is. Building your brand. Forget net. Oh yeah. So I don't believe in networking. I think that you should approach anybody in your life with, do you want to be friends with that person? Do you want to hang out with that person? A lot of those networking events are about what can I get from someone else, which is exhausting for everybody involved, right? What can I get from somebody else? How about instead you think about, do I want to hang out with this person? Is this a relationship I can build? Because I legitimately like this person. You're not going to like everybody and not everybody's going to like you. But instead of asking yourself, what can I get from this person? What can this person do for me? Think about, do I like this person? Do we connect? That's a lot of what Hollywood is. I would say that's what most of it is building real relationships. So, you know, I'm a mentor at Cinestory and I love it. And a couple of the people who are my mentees are now my very good friends. And neither of us have been able to do anything for each other in the industry. But now I have a really great friend and we talk about writing. And then if I see an opportunity, I share it with them because I want my friends to be successful and they want me to be successful. It's how I get opportunities. And that really is how I get opportunities, is I'm built positive relationships with people and they want to see me be successful and I want to see them be successful. So really approach all your meetings with, here's who I am, you know, here's what happened to me on the way to this meeting, and here's what I think is funny. And, you know, I grew up in a serial killer town. That's, you know, true. But I mean, it wasn't just for serial killers. There's just a lot of serial killers that ended up there, which is a whole other thing. Hey, maybe I'll write my next script about that. So I think approaching everybody you meet with, showing up who you are and what you think, like trying to brand yourself so that you give that person what they need, is the same as when I wrote the pilot that was to the network notes. It's not, I couldn't truthfully tell that story, and I can't truthfully sustain, I'm a person who, you know, wears fancy shoes, because I do not. I like to wear flip-flops. So figure out who you are and then be that person. And it's really hard because you feel like if you alienate someone important, if you don't connect with them, then you've lost somehow, but you've honestly won, because it's so hard to figure out how to please another person in order to be in their orbit. And it's just easier to find people that you are comfortable with. That's my little spiel about networking. How to connect with others during a pandemic. I mean, find writing groups, find a Facebook group. I know that's kind of an oldie thing. I don't know where the other groups are, but put yourself out there. A lot of people do stuff on Twitter. Just find ways to put yourself out there. If you're an introvert, if you're shy, it's a lot harder, but figure out how to put yourself out there. One way really is just to keep writing. And then when people ask you what you're working on, you can tell them. Working with representation, are agents and managers necessary? Yes, they are at some point. But there is this misconception that when you get a manager or an agent, you've made it, that now the jobs are going to come easily to you. And that's not true, because I would say most writers get 90% of their own work. My manager sets me up on meetings, which I love, which have sometimes resulted in work. But most of the things I have actually done are things that I've gotten for myself. Managers and agents help sort of legitimize you in a way. You know, if you're repped, you can get into different rooms. Your manager can call the network and set up meetings for you, which is really helpful. You know, my manager is a great creative partner. He reads my stuff, gives me amazing notes. But I think I think agents and managers are, especially in negotiations. And one thing I wanted to bring up about money. So, and this whole idea of when can you quit your day job? I think there's this idea that there's so much money to be made right off the bat, and then you're like in the clear. So like, I sold a show, I made all this money, and now I'm in. And that's not how it works. So if you make a bunch of money on a show, let's say you sell a pilot, right? And you make $100,000 on writing the script. That's a lot of money. But agents take 10%, managers take 10%, and a lawyer, and you should absolutely have a lawyer, even if you don't have an agent or a manager to negotiate a deal, that's 5%. So anything between 5, 15, 10, 25% of your money goes right off the top. So maximum, that's $25,000 right off the top, right? Then because you're just getting a lump sum, there's no taxes taken out, you have to set aside a big chunk of that for taxes, right? So of the $100,000 that you made, you're not actually getting $100,000. You might be able to put like $40,000 toward like, okay, this is the money that I made. So when you think about big sales, you have to, so this is why it's a constant hustle. This is why you have to be continuing. And this is why do not spend all your money when you make it, thinking that now this is how much money you're going to be making. Because I've had a whole year where I made no money. I was working my ass off that whole year. I mean, working my ass off, and I made no money. Some of the things hit the next year, but you have to be prepared. So if you sell a pilot for $100,000 and you're like, woohoo, and that's so great. But in reality, after taxes, after commissions, you're not actually bringing home that much money. And you have to be working for the next thing, because your show might not get picked up. You might not sell anything else for a while. That's my little money talk. Finding opportunities. That is about your relationships. That is about people who like you, people who you like, and giving people opportunities and them giving you opportunities and being available, but also really figuring out what it is you want to say and what project works for you. So I have taken on a ton of projects that didn't resonate with me, but I thought I need to take advantage of this opportunity because the person involved is a big name, or this is such a good, you know, it's IP and it's so sexy in the industry, but I couldn't figure out how to break it. And so it was just ended up being wasted time. I mean, not wasted really, because I was learning something along the way, but I really need to be connected to my project in order to write them. Not everybody does, not every writer does, but I want to tell stories about women who break the rules, who figure out how to get themselves out of a trap they've built themselves in whatever way that is. And so, because that's a story that I think I'm telling in my own life, right? How am I trapped? How can I break the rules? So figuring out the stories that matter to you and that you can tell. And again, not everybody has to do that. And I have definitely worked on projects that I did not like resonate with, but I did them for the money. So it's really about, and also sometimes you're going to find a project and it's going to like speak to you so personally, so gutturally, and then you're going to work on it and you still can't break it. So, I mean, again, there are no rules. Let me just see what this says for real. This says, how you can be true to yourself while still taking opportunities that come your way. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the answer. You can't know. You can't know. Like nothing is for sure and nothing is real. And you just have to sometimes just dive in, and you never know when something might be the thing that breaks for you. Saying no is incredibly hard, especially when you're first starting out, because you don't want to be perceived as someone who's picky or says no, or all those things. I think that's really true of women, because we're enculturated to be so accommodating and to figure it out how to make it work for everybody else. So it's really hard to learn how to say no as an artist, and I think that just comes with experience, and then looking back and saying, okay, that didn't work because of this, and that didn't work for this. I think you just do it, right? You're going to have successes and failures, and it is just the name of the game. Avoiding pigeonholes. I think this is about, you know, I don't want to just be considered a comedy writer. I don't want to just be considered an animation writer. And for me, that is really about when I go to a meeting and someone says, well, who are you? What do you write? And I say, disruptive women who find themselves trapped, who want to smash the patriarchy, right? And then that can be so many things to that other person. That can be exciting. And that's me saying I can write anything, because I do. Most of my projects are all over the place in terms of genre and medium. Finding longevity in your career is about perseverance. You just keep at it. You just keep going. You do not quit. Talent is out there, and you're essentially in a really talented company of other writers, but you don't quit. Most people don't make it because they quit. So you cannot quit. So when I talked at the beginning that like this is it for me, I'm in it, I can't quit. I have to keep showing up. I have to keep figuring out ways to make money so that I can keep writing until something hits that actually I can put a big chunk of money away and feel like, oh, I've got my fuck you money. I can start being a little picky about the projects I work on, or I can really develop this other thing that's going to take a long time. It's going to take me out of the hustle for a little bit. So you just keep going. You just don't give up, honestly. And I know that sounds so like rah rah, but that really is the secret to success in Hollywood, or in anything, really, I think. Okay, here I am having technical problems again. Oh my God, that's it. This is exciting. I made it. I did it. All right, my 3 driving principles, which are things that I am working on actively all the time. They are curiosity, generosity, and truth. So being curious about other people, other projects, other people, about yourself, your progress, your process, your progress, everything. Approaching things with curiosity for me has been such a powerful shift from approaching things with fear or all the reasons something isn't going to work, especially when I get notes. It's so important because I've had situations where I've gotten notes before that has blown me out so hard that I've just like cried for 2 hours after, because it just felt like it was me and not my work. I thought it was in better shape than it was, and I got all these notes. If I had been able in that note session to approach it with curiosity, it would have given me some distance. It would have allowed me to see what people were actually excited about instead of like basically blacking out, right? Everybody hates it. And people with curiosity, instead of what can you do for me, what can I do for you, right? Like how can we conquer the world together is something, whenever I do an introduction for 2 people that I really like, which I love doing. I love connecting other people and then watching them go off and make amazing things together. Is how can you 2 just conquer the world, right? So curiosity for me, and it's not easy. I'm not some enlightened person. This is hard every day. I have them in sticky notes up here, right? The other one is connected, but generosity. How can I be generous to other people, to other projects? If a friend asks me to read something, I'm gonna say yes, because I want to help them be successful. But a big part of this is being generous to yourself. How can you extend that generosity to yourself? How can I figure out what I need? How can I figure out how I can be successful? How can I figure out, all the things, how to be generous with yourself? Again, I'm actively working on this. I'm really trash at this one, but I'm trying. For me, being generous with myself means not eating potato chips all day, because I love chips, but then I get sick. So actually being generous is not eating chips all day. And the other thing is truth, which is telling the truth in your work, capital T truth, it's fiction, fictionalized things, even very personal things. How do you translate to be the truth so that it's specific and will resonate with people? The more specific you can get in your storytelling, the more it resonates with people because it is truth. And the other thing is telling the truth about who you are. So understanding who you are and then owning that. I spent years trying to be small and helpful, right? I'm a tall woman with great big hair and a big loud voice and a startling personality, so it's a little hard, but I have spent years trying to make myself palatable, how to make myself likable, how to squeeze into this little place that I thought was where I was supposed to be. And you know what? Fuck that. Just fuck it. That's not who I am. The truth of me is that not everyone likes me. People find me grating and annoying and all the terrible things, and I don't care anymore because there are enough people that like me as I am that makes my life rich and fun and interesting, right? And this has taken me 50 years to get here, but it is something I have to put up on my wall, like be generous, be curious, and tell the truth. And that includes not making myself small to make other people comfortable, which is, I think, just such a driving principle in terms of our writing, which is about finding your voice and knowing your voice and using your voice. You're going to piss people off. You're going to make people uncomfortable. And that's exactly what you should be doing. The end.
Lauren, that was amazing. I feel so inspired, and not because you were being so like idealistic and fake, but because it was just so real. And Kay just wrote in the comments, "You are my role model. I love this."
Oh no, that's a lot of pressure.
Margaret just wrote fastest hour ever. So I think people really enjoyed what you said, what you had to say. So thank you so much for that. That was really fantastic. And for everyone else, thanks for being here. As a reminder, oh yeah, Lorian, take a break, drink some water or something. You've been talking for a while, and you're gonna do a little bit more if that's okay.
My favorite thing to do is talk about myself.
Well, there's a little bit more where that came from. For everyone else, so glad to have you here. If you were late, just as a reminder, we now have a chance to ask Lorian any questions that you might have. To do that, you'll type in questions in the questions box of your GoToWebinar toolbar. We'll get to as many as we can. So feel free. We already got a lot of great questions, but please feel free to keep on asking them, and I will try to get to as many as possible and keep on making this conversation happen. First of all, Lorian, there actually were a few people who want you to talk more about what a general is and what that means.
Okay. Yeah. Can I see you at least when we're talking?
Oh, sorry, I forgot about that.
Okay.
All good.
Okay.
So let's talk about what are generals? What does that mean, and how can you get them?
So a general meeting is basically just a meeting with anyone. Generally speaking, it's right. It could be someone introduces you to someone. So like if one of you got introduced to someone who's a showrunner and you're just gonna have a general with them, it just means like go meet them. They could be in their offices, they could be at a coffee shop. It's generally just it's a time to see if you guys connect, see if you guys can work on something together, see if this is a relationship you want to continue to build. When you get repped, your manager or your agent will set up general meetings for you, and so they could be with showrunners, big name screenwriters, executives. A lot of time they're with executives. A lot of times they're people that have a relationship with your rep and they're looking for a certain type of writer. So they'll set you up on some generals, right? Usually when you get repped, the first thing you do is get sent on the water bottle tour. And so how a general works is you make the meeting, which your manager will set up the meeting, or even if you're setting up the meeting will get changed, canceled, and rescheduled multiple times. One time I had a general with somebody that got pushed so many times that it was a year to the day when the meeting was finally going to happen. Wow. And the assistant called me to tell me that the executive got fired that day. So I never met with that executive, right? So your meetings might get pushed, and just don't be discouraged. It is nothing personal. They're not like, oh God, I don't want to meet with that person. What does that person want? They want to have generals because you could be the big thing that makes them look amazing to their boss, right? People want to have meetings with you. So a general is, you go, you choose what kind of water you want if it's in person, right? I would suggest never choosing the bubble water because I've had quite a few burp incidents happen.
That's good advice.
Don't drink too much of the water in the meeting because you might have to pee. So at-home generals are all on Zoom. But so basically, if it's just a general, it's like, hey, so where are you from, and how long have you been in Hollywood, and what did you have for lunch? It's a date. It's a first date, in not a creepy way. So when I first got here, I thought generals were interviews. So I would like sell myself, and this is what I want, this is who I am, and garbage. They all crashed and burned, right? No one wanted to connect with me after that because I was too needy. I was too desperate. I was too like, how can you help me? Right? So, but a general is really like, are you connecting with person? And sometimes they're great. Sometimes you end up spending just time talking about your favorite movie, or anything. And then at the very, very end of the meeting, they might be like, oh, hey, I have a project I'm going to send you. See if you're interested. Or, hey, I have this book. Would you be interested in reading it and pitching on it? Or, it was great to meet you. The end. You've made a positive connection. And you send a little note after that's 2 sentences long max, which is like, it was so fun to meet with you. I can't wait to hear more about your project that you're working on, right? And that's all it is. It's a connection you've made. And sometimes they're terrible. Sometimes you go to a general and you just have nothing to say to the person. It's like, this is so awkward, and that's it. And that's okay. That just means you didn't connect. But just remember that Hollywood is extraordinarily small. So don't trash anybody. Do not trash any TV show you've seen. Do not trash a movie. Say nothing negative. If somebody asks you about a TV show that you don't like, you just say like, oh yeah, it's on my list. Like, do not admit to not, because that executive could have made that show. Their sister could have made the show. They're best friends with the actress in the show, right? Like, Hollywood is so small. Like, you don't realize, and also don't assume because of how somebody looks that they're not powerful. When you go to a general in person, you're going to run into people in the bathroom. Be cool. The general starts the minute you leave your house. You could run into someone in the parking garage. You could run into someone in the, just be cool, right? Like, don't flip anyone off. Not that any of you would, but traffic in LA. So, Zoom generals are a little easy because you have the control of the camera. But when we go back to in-person meetings, it starts the minute you leave your house. And give yourself enough time to find a bathroom before the meeting, because I have to get anywhere half an hour early because I have terrible stomach issues and I get very nervous. I am nervous before any meeting and any pitch. Like, I've been in like high-powered meetings. I have fancy friends, they wouldn't consider themselves fancy, but like, I get nervous. I'm nervous. And then I just sort of get over it, right? Once the meeting starts. But so that's a general. The goal of a general is to get a second date or a second interaction. When you're repped, the person in the general will connect back with your manager and be like, oh, I loved her. Here's a project we want to work on together. Or, she was great, but I don't have anything for her right now. I'm like, that's it. So it's just an opportunity to be amazing, to find your people.
That's a nice perspective. And TJ just actually asked, and you said this a little, how early should you arrive for in-person meetings in LA? Do you have a rule of thumb?
How early?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm always early. I'm early to everything. I think I was early to this webinar.
I'm
not one of those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a late person. I'm extraordinarily anxious. I take anxiety medicine. It does not help. I am always afraid if the person I'm meeting isn't there that I've shown up on the wrong day, because once I showed up to a meeting at Disney a week early.
Wow.
That is not how you do it. Don't do that. And I was mad too because they weren't ready for me. And I was like, how dare you? And I was like, oh my God, I'm a week early.
Actually, this brings, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's your threshold, but be early. because they could be running early, they could be running late, and do not act creepy if they're late. Because sometimes you won't get called into the meeting for like 45 minutes. You're just sitting in the lobby being awkward. Don't act creepy about it. I mean, at some point, if somebody takes out their phone during a meeting and starts checking their email, it's probably, you could be a little, okay, I guess I should leave. But generally speaking, just be cool, but show up early.
I love it. Actually, this is a good segue into it.
But one more note about being early.
No, please.
Because of traffic and the way it is in LA, if you are late, it is not the end of the world. Give yourself enough time to get there to be on time. But if you are late, call like I call my manager. I took a weird turn and I'm stuck in traffic. Let me know if they want to reschedule the meeting, or this is me on the phone. So just communicate if you are late. And because it's not like in the Bay Area, you better be early. But in LA, because of traffic, so communicate, be clear, but don't be late.
Awesome.
Okay, sorry.
No, this is all really good. This kind of leads me to another question from Katie, which she says, how do you balance mental health with being a writer full time?
I don't know. I have a psychiatrist. I have to pay attention to, and I'm looking for a new therapist. I have to pay attention to what's going on with me. The pandemic has been extraordinarily hard because it's hard to know if it's pandemic depression, pandemic anxiety. I got a third grader at home doing school. My husband's home. Like, it's so hard to sort that out. And I talked to my psychiatrist about it. I'm like, how do I know if this is real or pandemic? And she's like, it's all real. It's all real. It doesn't matter if it's coming from inside or from the outside. You have to take it all seriously. I think it's about communicating about what's going on with you. If you need help, ask for it. I think that's reach out. Like, if you're really struggling, find somebody that you can talk with. But it's a constant life thing. Everything. I feel like I'm on a constant like up and down, up and down. I take a lot of medication and I'm quite happy about it. It doesn't dull me, obviously. It just helps me. I am trying to survive. I am trying to be functional. That's my goal so that I can work. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, let's get to some more questions. This is gonna be a little bit all over the place, which I think you're comfortable with that. This is from David. David's wondering, do you get residuals as a sole writer or as a studio writer?
It depends on what TV shows. So I don't get residuals. I haven't gotten anything that has residuals yet, but apparently they come in like a really cool green envelope when you get them, right? That is all really according to the NBA contract, the WGA with the studios. And it depends on who you're writing for. Like, animation doesn't generally have residuals, animation TV shows, and feature animation, no, they're not WGA movies, generally speaking. TV, you should get residuals, but I don't know how those deals work. That's something I don't know. So it's just a lot of words to say, I don't know. You can, but I don't know what the rules are.
Got it. Okay, let's move on. Garrett has a good question. He says he's really curious to hear about how people find the types of side jobs you mentioned, like story editing. How can people find those kind of opportunities?
Through your connections. So that was something that like Meg used to do, and someone asked her if she could do a project and she said no, but she suggested me. Right. And sometimes things come up on my radar that I can't do, but I will toss to another, like, hey, do you want to do this? Like, I can't. So that's about building relationships and people believing that you can do it, because they're not going to refer you for a job if they don't think you can do it, because they don't want to look bad.
Yeah.
It's really your people. And I'm not friends with Meg for what she can give me, so that, like, at the core of it, at the end of all the projects we've worked together and the podcast and everything, if all of that fails, the most important thing to me at the end of the day is that Meg and I are still friends. And so that's always what I have, right? Like, can I do this? Should I do this? Because I want us to be friends. So that's how I operate.
Great.
Because when I was in high school, I was a jerk. So I've learned my lesson.
We've all learned something from high school, I think.
Yes. Yes.
No, that's really good to hear. I think that's a really good approach, and probably something a lot of people do need to hear. So I'm glad you're saying it. Um, let's see. This is an interesting question from Annabelle. She's wondering if you can recommend a book or any sort of advice on how to write coverage for other people. So like you were talked about how to receive coverage, but can you talk about how you can support other people's writings with your own coverage or notes?
Coverage is its own thing, right? That's like an executive thing. That's like an agency. They're going to say, read this script and write coverage on it. And so that as the agent, I can just read the coverage and see if that's a project I want to dig into. But giving notes to other people, I prefer getting and giving verbal notes so that it's more of a conversation. So it's more of a discovery, more of a collaboration. I find that doing written notes and getting them feels like kind of aggressive, and then there's not an opportunity to sort of sort out what I actually am saying in the notes. So for me, it's what do I love? What do I love about this, right? I love your voice. I love this action sequence. Oh my God, I love how it ended. I love how funny you are. I love this specific line that was so funny. And then here are the questions I had. I didn't understand this part here, the switch over. Is this a different day? I didn't get why she's yelling at him here. All of my examples are throwing something, hitting someone with a car, yelling at someone. I have some Gretchen issues about men. So I think for me, that's really it. And then if the person wants to talk it through, then talking it through with them. Well, what about this? And spitballing some things, if the person's like, well, did you not like, as the note taker, ask questions, right? So that you're curious instead of blacking out, right? Instead of like, oh my God, they hated it. I don't know how to solve this. It's like, well, let me ask some questions. Why didn't you like this part? Or what didn't you think was believable? Or do you think it's this character is not in the scene? Or, you spitball, you work it through with someone. But coverage is, I've never written coverage. I don't think I'd like to get it, the format of it. But notes, yes.
Got it. Okay, great. Let's do more. This is a question from, we're actually getting a few of these questions. This is from David. He says, I'm moving from LA to Denver. Am I cutting off my career before it starts? And I guess a bigger question, you moved to LA to be a writer. Is that necessary? Can you find a writing career in Denver and other places?
I think that right now, you could be a writer anywhere because there's like virtual writers rooms, and I think it's easier to be a writer not in LA if you are a screenwriter, but you do still have to establish and maintain those relationships in LA because even with the pandemic, things are really trying to get back to normal right now. And so that means people want to be back together. And so even if you're a screenwriter, feature film writer or doing your own thing, you need those relationships, or else you don't have access to have people look at your work. It's really about relationships. That whole who you know thing is not about like, I know fancy people who are going to leverage things for me. It's relationships. So if you can be outside of LA and maintain and build your network and your relationships, then go for it. I don't know about TV. If my series goes, the show I'm working on, I will eventually want everybody to be back in the room. I don't know that I'll be able to have writers who are like zooming in because being in the room is better.
Yeah. I think the question is the answer might be, changing because of this, and it's gonna be curious to see what happens once things start readjusting.
Also, do what you need to do to take care of yourself and figure out how to make it work for yourself. There are no, just figure it out, do it, right? Like if you want to move to Denver and you want to be a writer, figure out how to make that work for you. Just because the way it's been is the way it's been, like the world is imploding, changing, figure out how to make it work for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, this is an interesting question from Jack. He said, what are realistic deadline lengths from the sale of the pitch to a first draft?
So there are steps. Is that like a TV show or a feature? Are they?
I don't know, Jack, if you want to respond with that. Maybe you can speak to both, though.
So a feature is generally if you've gone and you've pitched an idea and they're like, great. And then you go through like 3, 4, 6 months of negotiating the contract, and then finally you get kicked off. It's usually 12 weeks to write a feature, and there are steps. So you have to deliver the outline, first draft, second draft, and a polish. Although, well, that's TV. Some features are just one draft. Like the feature stuff is harder, but it's usually 12 weeks to write a feature to deliver, which is not your first draft, which is a draft that you've rewritten and shown to people you trust and gotten notes and worked and worked and worked and worked until you feel like this is the best possible version of this that I feel good about. In TV, again, you've pitched it, you've spent, my last show took 6 months to negotiate the contract. So we pitched it in August. The deal closed in February. I don't know how many months that is. It was a long time. So not getting paid for anything. I don't get paid now. I get paid now for working what I'm doing, not for the whole year I was in the show figuring out the pitch. For TV, it's to write the pilot. It is story area. You get commenced. When you get commenced, you get 10% of the pilot fee. Then there's that's just where the network is like, okay, here's our notes on what you pitched and here's what we're expecting. And then you write the story area, which is usually like 2 or 3 paragraphs of like, here's what the pilot's going to be about. Here's the pilot story. And then I think you get like 30% of your pilot fee for that. And then there's outline, which is not an outline with like bullet points. It's like a 5-page document of every scene written out, what happens. And then you go to draft. Then you get first draft, second draft, polish. And those are the steps. And that could take 2 months, 8 months. Like that is up to how quickly you're moving, how quickly the studio is moving, the network is moving to give you notes, what else is going on. In the middle of one of my pilot processes, Disney bought Hulu. So everything got, I was like, we're going with Hulu, and then Disney bought the network, and it was like, wow. So everything changed.
Okay,
I guess I'll never not work for Disney.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess not. I think we all are.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we can knock out a few more questions. These are all really good. Thanks everyone for
I'll be more concise. Okay.
No, these are fantastic. I think
okay.
Wax poetically, please. So Amy's asking, do you think that when you're having trouble breaking a story, it's because it just doesn't resonating with you and you're better off moving on to something else, or could there be other reasons?
Both. Sometimes it's really hard to know, right? Like there was one feature I was I was asked to come up with a pitch to do a rewrite on, right? And so I came up with 4 full feature pitches, right, for free, because the idea is that I would then pitch it to the studio with the people who were working on it, and then I would get hired to do the rewrite, and I couldn't break it. Whether it was I just didn't connect with it, or I don't know. I just couldn't do it. Looking back, I'm like, oh, I didn't connect with it. But like, who knows? Maybe sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes there are other factors going on. I like to get a distance from it and be like, it wasn't my fault. I can't spend time beating myself up about what isn't working out, because I'll just fall into a pit of despair and never get out. Right? I have to look forward.
Yeah. But do you have
That's a really good question, and it's really hard to answer.
Well, can you talk to like when you decide to like walk away, either for someone else's assignment or for your own thing? Like, is there a time you're like, let me just check back on this in a week and see if I can break it better then, or like, how do you know when this is just not for me?
It really depends. Like, if you're getting different notes every time you deliver something, like if the executive keeps changing their mind, like, oh, we're not going to be successful no matter what I do. If I don't know, it's such a hard question, because every project is its own unique thing, right? Sometimes projects just sort of dump out of you and you're like, oh my God, it's amazing. And other projects take like 3 years to figure out what it's about. I had to walk away from a project I sold to Netflix, which was really, really hard, because the personalities involved were not, it was toxic for me. and I had to make like a really fucking hard decision, and I don't regret it, but it was toxic. The project, the environment was toxic, and I couldn't do it. Like that's about balancing my mental health and my career and everything. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to do it. And you know, that show will be on Netflix soon, run by somebody else.
Yeah.
But you know, I think it's just about, are you spending your time in the right ways? So I don't
Yeah.
know. The answer is I don't know.
No, I think I think that's good. It's a complicated question. It needs to be a complicated answer.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is from Judith. I think I understand your question, Judith. Let me just make sure. Judith said, when you sit down and write pages looking for story, I guess at the beginning, can you give an example of how you find the story, look for the story initially? Do you start by dragging in your own memories? I guess your own experiences.
It's different for every single project. One thing I did for a project recently, a friend of mine suggested this, which was really helpful, is I had an idea of what I wanted to write about, like a big concept. And then I couldn't figure out how to start writing it because it was so personal. I've been trying to write it for 17 years. I took a pilot from a show that's successful, and I just used that structurally. So I was like, oh, in this scene, she goes to the support group. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna have her go to a dinner party. And but the same sort of plot and character stuff was happening in the scene, so that I could get it down, just have something written down. Because otherwise I was just sort of, I couldn't, it was too hard. So I was like, oh, I'm just gonna cheat. A lot of writers, I think, do this. But it was a show that resonated with me. And so then I was like, oh, well, in this scene, you know, we go to a flashback. I'm like, well, I don't want a flashback. I'm going to do something else. But like at the same, so I could just write anything. So I just had a draft. And then of course I've rewritten it 500 times. But sometimes I just write about like things I'm mad about, or sometimes I just write like a character, like what they're doing. I follow them around all day until they do something interesting. It's really different with every project. I like IP. I like to do adaptations of books because it's all there. So like it's in collaboration. Yeah, I mean, any way you can write words down, any way you can get a first draft, like a puke, just puke it out. Just blah, 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 blah. Don't rewrite, just get anything out. That's it. It doesn't matter how you get there. There's no right or wrong. Just get a first draft, a dump draft, a puke draft, and then you can go back and come up with your first draft from that.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's great. And actually on that subject, you brought this up in your presentation. Can you speak more to what a story engine is and how you use that in developing your own script?
Oh my God, a story engine is so hard. In TV, a story engine is why you come back to watch the show every week, right? It's not just the characters or the questions. It's so like, I don't know, what's your favorite show? What's your favorite show of yours that you watch?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I'm usually the one that asks the question.
No, what's a show? Like, let's talk about a show.
Sure. I mean, like, let's see. Like, I like the show Lost. That was one of my favorite shows growing up.
Okay, so Lost, the engine is, what's going on?
Sure.
Where are they, right? So the engine is like, where are they? So then you have all these great characters, but they are trying to figure out where they are and what's going on. And we're on the edge of our seats, like, what's happening, right? That's a very broad story engine, right? But like, why did they crash there? Why are they together? But you know, like a show like The Good Place, right? The engine is, again, where are they? What's happening, right? But it's like you know, are they in heaven? Are they in hell, right? Engines are hard. And when you look at a TV show that's successful, you're like, oh, it's obvious. But like coming up with an engine, like murder mysteries are good, right? Someone got murdered. Who did it, right? So, but an engine, it's like what keeps the action going? What makes it so that there's going to be thousands of episodes? So procedural, right? Murder of the week, right? You keep going. That's a good engine. Then you have all the character stuff, but you know, finding the engine. Will she leave? Will she stay? Right? Will he join the gang? Won't he? Will he break out of prison? Won't he? Right? And then the how. So an engine is incredibly hard. I'm probably explaining this like trash because it is still always a mystery to me. Anything I write, my manager goes, "What's the engine?" I'm like, I don't know. don't you love my characters and my dialogue though? You know, it's a beautiful, you know, it's the high concept, right? It's the what keeps it going. In feature, there's no story engine. In feature, you have the plot and what the main character learns, right? You've got Act 2, that's the movie. But although I said that though, I don't know if that's true. I am still, you know, I wrestle with story engine all the time, but it's like what the show is about, why we keep watching.
Yeah. He just wrote, now I want to know what the engine is for sex education. Do you watch that show?
I've seen a couple of episodes. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's a good question. Figure it out. Why do you keep watching it? Right? Like what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Will that kid grow up to be normal? Or whatever normal is, right? Like I don't know what the engine is. Like I said, like I'm bad at this. I guess I'm a TV showrunner and I'm bad at story engines. I hope this isn't recorded.
Anyway, let's do a couple more questions before
Okay.
I'll let you go.
Okay.
Let's see. Brian said, I believe you said you studied playwriting. Can you talk about the transition to screenwriting and what the difference is between the two types of writing?
So for me, playwriting was all dialogue. I never wrote scene directions as a playwright. I loved Tom Stoppard. I loved Susan-Lori Parks. I loved Sheree Moraga. You know, when I was an actress, the first thing the director always said was, don't pay any attention to the screen directions. We're going to do our own blocking. We're going to figure it out ourselves. I was in a play once written by William Mastrosimone, and there was one screen direction, and it was, she puts down the hammer. And I was like, oh, when did I pick up the hammer? Right? So like we got to decide. So that's how I learned playwriting. Structurally, I was not taught the 3-act structure. It was much more sort of organic flow. It wasn't until I got to Pixar and I was sitting in editorial and I was like, oh, 3 acts, structure, right? It wasn't until I started to understand how that worked, you know, character is plot, plot is structure, theme is character, right? There, it's all connected. But I did not learn structure in that way as a playwright. And if I went back to write a play now, I think I'd be really confused, right? Because I wouldn't know quite where to go. That's not to say plays aren't written with 3-act structure. Just that's not how I was taught. Well, it's not what I learned. It's possible they were teaching me that and I didn't figure it out, right? Until I was at Pixar. But so I tend to write dialogue heavy scripts. I love dialogue. And then I have to sort of check back in and like, oh, is there a visual way I can tell this part? So I write mostly just walls and walls and walls of dialogue. And then I go back and think like, okay, we don't need to talk about the seatbelt. She's gonna put the seatbelt on, right? Like I have to figure that stuff out sometimes because that's how I discover in my writing is what they're saying to each other. So that's my experience.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's see, a couple more, or maybe one more. Oh, this is a good question from Stephen. He says, what are your thoughts on querying? I guess he means managers or agents or anyone who's working on a project. And when is it appropriate to send a query letter?
I'm not a great, I don't know because I never did it. I got my first manager sort of accidentally. So a friend of a friend introduced me to somebody. She gave me advice. She said, pretend I'm your manager in this meeting. I said, why don't you be my manager? And she said, okay. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. So I've never queried anybody and I don't know the rules around that. I know that's a big question for a lot of people, but I don't know.
I will say we have a few really good webinars on queries that I recommend you guys check out with some managers and other people who really know when's appropriate and when's not. So
yes. I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay. Appreciate the honesty, and I think there are people on the Stage 32 network who really do know that. So feel free to reach out to me, anyone, if you do want more information on that. h.glaser@stage32.com, or anything else. So keep on looking through our website for more questions and answers. But I think now's a good time to start wrapping up. So first off, Lorian, thank you so much for giving your time and laying it out and doing it in a way that felt real and true and vulnerable, and I think helpful to a lot of people. Really quickly, if anyone does have any final thoughts or words for Lorian, feel free to put them in the questions box. I don't think you can see that, Lorian, but I'll read them out loud.
Yeah.
And while you do that, Lauren, you have already been saying this, but we do like to end our webinars with just kind of like parting thoughts, last words of encouragement, especially during this kind of tough time we're all in right now. What do you kind of tell everyone who's like working on making that step in their career?
I think it's so important. Well, keep writing, right? Keep writing, and all the things you're experiencing, someone else is experiencing too, right? Like all the highs and the lows and the fears and the freakouts and all that stuff, like other writers are all feeling it constantly, all the time. It doesn't matter how successful a person is. They are still scared to go to a meeting. They still think they're going to fail. They still freak out when they can't break a story. It's all the same stuff, no matter how fancy you get. And I don't include myself in the fancy group. I feel like I'm very much still like trying to figure this shit out. So keep writing. Find people who you want to support and who support you. Find your writing people. That's so important, so that you can put that freak out on them, and then they can validate like, oh yeah, I know exactly where you are. And then something Meg always says, which I find really inspiring, is which I kind of talked about it in a little, is, you know, you're not a writer accidentally, right? You're a writer, and the world needs your voice. So it's kind of your responsibility to tell your stories. This isn't a hobby or something, you know, you're dabbling in. You've been sort of tasked by, I don't know, the gods to write. So you have to now.
I love it.
Good luck.
I love it. Good luck, everyone. Well, and the good reviews are coming in. I just want to read some out loud. They're
I
saying,
have a really hard time taking compliments.
you're gonna just for a little. Thank you so much. You are a magical delight. Margaret wrote, not a question, just a big fat fucking thank you. That was phenomenal. And yes, I swore because I'm owning it now, which I love.
Right.
So raw, loved all of it. Amazing. Your vulnerability is inspiring. I love you in your podcast, says Annabelle. I love Meg and Jeff. Thank you for the beautiful inspiration in each podcast episode. I'll also give a link for everyone to the podcast so you guys can check it out and hear more from Lorian and also Meg and everyone who's involved.
This week we're talking about antagonists, which is, so we talk about like craft and then emotional stuff, and then we have guests on, but you know, Meg is the craft wizard, so she's going to talk about antagonists, and I'm going to ask weird questions.
That's my job.
Yeah.
I can relate. Anyway, they keep on coming in. I think this was really impactful and really helpful. So thank you so much. Thank you for doing this and for putting up with the compliments at the end as well. So appreciate it. And thanks everyone else for joining, for being part of this. We're so glad to have everyone here today. We will see you at the next webinar. And aside from that, have a great rest of your week.
Bye. Thank you.